Hello, you're watching CVR News English. This is Havila Kottapalli. Welcome to World Bulletin. Well, moving into the details, police stations are now open in Berlin as German citizens cast their votes to decide the country's next chancellor. With pre-election surveys showing a strong lead for Friedrich Merkel's centre-right CDU-CSU bloc, the election appears to be shifting in favour of the Conservatives. The current Chancellor Olaf Scholz and his Social Democratic Party have been a significant dip in support, leaving them trailing in the polls. Meanwhile, the far-right Alternative for Germany has gained momentum and bolstered by support from key figures associated with former US current President Donald Trump, and a growing sense of public frustration. Well, this frustration has been partly fueled by violent incidents such as deadly knife attacks and car rammings, which many attribute to migrants, further intensifying the debate on immigration and security. As per the media pushes for a record high score, the political divide in Germany seems to be widening, with many fearing an increasingly polarized future. Well, outside the Gemelli Hospital in Rome, a quiet and somber atmosphere surrounds the iconic medical facility, where Pope Francis remains under close care after a respiratory attack the previous evening. The Vatican has reassured the public that the 88-year-old pontiff has a peaceful night, with the Holy See offering a brief update confirming that he had rested well. Despite the improvement, his condition remains critical, and the Pope continues to receive medical attention following the need for blood transfusions. The scene outside the hospital is marked by a mix of media presence, concern, onlookers, and prayers as people continue to express their hope for the Pope's recovery. His health has been a matter of great concern worldwide, with many awaiting further updates on his condition. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's recent visit to the Tulkirim refugee camp in the occupied West Bengal underscores Israel's intensified military operations in the region following a series of bus bombings near Tel Aviv today. Well, Netanyahu ordered the Israeli Defense Forces to launch additional operational activity against terrorist centers in the West Bank. Well, the Tulkiram refugee camp located in the northern West Bank has been identified as a significant hub for militant activities. During his visit, Netanyahu emphasized the IDF strategy of entering terrorist strongholds, clearing entire streets used by terrorists and eliminating terrorists and commandos.
רגע לפני כניסת השבת באתי כאן למחנה הפליטים בטול כרם להיות עם חיילינו הגיבורים. הם עושים עבודה נהדרת. בשנה האחרונה אנחנו מאוד הגברנו את הפעילות שלנו. אנחנו נכנסים למעוזי הטרור, משטחים רחובות שלמים שמשמשים את הטרוריסטים, את הבתים שלהם, מחסלים טרוריסטים, מפקדים. עושים עבודה מאוד מאוד חשובה נגד הרצון של חמאס וגורמי טרור אחרים לפגוע בנו. הרצון הזה עדיין לא נפסק. מה שראינו אתמול, הניסיון לבצע פיגועי שרשרת המוניים, זה דבר חמור ביותר. בתגובה אנחנו תגברנו, לפי הנחייתי והנחיית שר הביטחון, לתגבר את הכוחות ביהודה ושומרון ולצאת לפעילות מבצעית נוספת נגד מוקדי טרור. ואני יודע שהחיילים הגיבורים שלנו יודעים לעשות את המלאכה הזאת היטב. רגע לפני כניסת השבת באתי כאן למחנה הפליטים בטול כרם להיות עם חיילינו הגיבורים. הם עושים עבודה נהדרת. בשנה האחרונה אנחנו מאוד הגברנו את הפעילות שלנו. אנחנו נכנסים למעוזי הטרור, משטחים רחובות שלמים שמשמשים את הטרוריסטים, את הבתים שלהם, מחסלים טרוריסטים, מפקדים. עושים עבודה מאוד מאוד חשובה נגד הרצון של חמאס וגורמי טרור אחרים לפגוע בנו. הרצון הזה עדיין לא נפסק. מה שראינו אתמול, הניסיון לבצע פיגועי שרשרת המוניים, זה דבר חמור ביותר. בתגובה אנחנו תגברנו, לפי הנחייתי והנחיית שר הביטחון, לתגבר את הכוחות ביהודה ושומרון ולצאת לפעילות מבצעית נוספת נגד מוקדי טרור. ואני יודע שהחיילים הגיבורים שלנו יודעים לעשות את המלאכה הזאת היטב. רגע לפני כניסת השבת באתי כאן למחנה הפליטים בטול כרם להיות עם חיילינו הגיבורים. הם עושים עבודה נהדרת. בשנה האחרונה אנחנו מאוד הגברנו את הפעילות שלנו. אנחנו נכנסים למעוזי הטרור, משטחים רחובות שלמים שמשמשים את הטרוריסטים, את הבתים שלהם, מחסלים טרוריסטים, מפקדים. עושים עבודה מאוד מאוד חשובה נגד הרצון של חמאס וגורמי טרור אחרים לפגוע בנו. הרצון הזה עדיין לא נפסק. מה שראינו אתמול, הניסיון לבצע פיגועי שרשרת המוניים, זה דבר חמור ביותר. בתגובה אנחנו תגברנו, לפי הנחייתי והנחיית שר הביטחון, לתגבר את הכוחות ביהודה ושומרון ולצאת לפעילות מבצעית נוספת נגד מוקדי טרור. ואני יודע שהחיילים הגיבורים שלנו יודעים לעשות את המלאכה הזאת היטב. רגע לפני כניסת השבת באתי כאן למחנה הפליטים בטול כרם להיות עם חיילינו הגיבורים. הם עושים עבודה נהדרת. בשנה האחרונה אנחנו מאוד הגברנו את הפעילות שלנו. אנחנו נכנסים למעוזי הטרור, משטחים רחובות שלמים.
There are no reports confirming that President Donald Trump has fired Air Force General C.Q. Brown or nominated retired Lieutenant General Dan Kane as his successor. Additionally, a retired officer being pulled back into active service to become the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff would be highly unusual and require special congressional approval. As of now, General C.Q. Brown remains the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, have taken over the role from General Mark Milley on the October 1st, 2023. If you would like, I can check for the latest updates on this topic.
I have not seen any.
President Donald Trump fired Air Force General C.Q. Brown on Friday in an unprecedented shake-up of U.S. military leadership.
We dressed it up.
Trump said in a post on Truth Social that he would nominate former Lieutenant General Dan Kane to succeed Brown. It's the first time someone has been pulled out of retirement to become the top military officer. Brown, the second black officer to become the president's top uniformed military advisor, was serving a 4-year term meant to end in September 2027.
Military leaders.
A US official said Brown was relieved with immediate effect before the Senate confirms his successor. Democratic lawmakers have condemned Republican Trump's decision to remove the US general. The Pentagon says the president will also replace the head of the US Navy, Admiral Lisa Franchetti, as well as the Air Force Vice Chief of Staff. He is also removing the Judge Advocates General for the Army, Navy and Air Force. It's unclear whom the Trump administration will pick to fill those positions.
Your country first.
Trump's decision sets off a period of upheaval at the Pentagon, which was already bracing for mass firings of civilian staff. The uniformed members of the US Armed Forces are meant to be apolitical, carrying out the policies of Democratic and Republican administrations.
I have not seen any.
President Donald Trump fired Air Force General C.Q. Brown on Friday in an unprecedented shakeup of US military leadership.
We dressed it up.
Trump said in a post on Truth Social that he would nominate former Lieutenant General Dan Kane to succeed Brown. It's the first time someone has been pulled out of retirement to become the top military officer. Brown, the second black officer to become the president's top uniformed military advisor, was serving a 4-year term meant to end in September 2027.
Military leaders.
A US official said Brown was relieved with immediate effect before the Senate confirms his successor. Democratic lawmakers have condemned Republican Trump's decision to remove the US general. The Pentagon says the president will also replace the head of the US Navy, Admiral Lisa Franchetti, as well as the Air Force Vice Chief of Staff. He is also removing the Judge Advocates General for the Army, Navy and Air Force. It's unclear whom the Trump administration will pick to fill those positions.
Your country first.
Trump's decision sets off a period of
A Hawaii man who spent 3 decades behind bars for the murder he always denied committing was released from prison following a judge's order based on new DNA evidence. The man, who had long maintained his innocence, celebrated his release, calling the day Freedom Friday and expressing his eagerness to reunite with his mother. His case was re-examined after new forensic evidence cast doubt on his conviction, leading to his exoneration.
The defense couldn't argue these facts at the trial because the defense did not have the benefit of the DNA results to rebut the state's argument, and they have that now. This court finds that the new DNA testimony is of such a nature as would probably change the result of a later trial. So based on the court's findings, grounds 5 through 8 of the petition are dismissed, grounds 1 through 4 of the petition are granted, and the judgment and sentence is vacated, and the defendant is ordered to be released from custody.
Yes, well, yesterday we went and had some lunch. When I got out, I had some steak, and then we went to the graveyard to see my mom and my grandparents. And yes, well, yesterday we went and had say hi.
The state also argues that Mr. Hayes' testimony would be solely for the purposes of impeachment of the state's handwriting.
The day of the shooting, I was taking care of my mom and working in the garage. It was my turn to take care of my mom that day. So
This is material to the issues and not cumulative or offered solely for the purposes of impeachment, and 4, that the evidence is of such a nature.
yeah, it's hard. It's hard to deal with for sure, but I had a wonderful family, and they were a blessing, and they knew I was innocent. They stuck with me the whole time, and I needed to prove to them that no matter what, I was going to be a better person. So I stayed out of trouble. I did good things in prison, so I didn't want to disappoint him twice.
The 3 particles he found in the truck, which only contained lead and copper, were consistent with gunshot residue. This was the only physical evidence.
It's not easy doing time for something you know you didn't do, and my family stuck with me the whole time, and I'm glad and I'm very blessed.
On his 65th birthday, Japan's Emperor Naruhito emphasized the significance of passing down the story of World War II to younger generations, reflecting on the 80th anniversary of war's end. He vowed to contribute to efforts aimed at promoting historical understanding and fostering a commitment to peace. His remarks highlighted the ongoing importance of educating future generations about the past to ensure a peaceful future.
寒さの厳しい中、誕生日にこのように来ていただき、祝っていただくことをありがたく思います。この冬はことのほか各地で大雪に見舞われており、皆さんのご苦労もいかばかりかと思います。そのような中にあって、
Elon Musk, leading the Trump administration's Department of Government Efficiency, issued a stern warning to federal employees, stating that anyone unable to justify their work accomplishments from the previous week would be fired. Stressing the importance of accountability, Musk emphasized that government operations must be transparent and productivity. He also asserted that inefficiency would not be tolerated, signaling a stricter approach to federal workforce management. Musk's directive aligns with the administration's broader push for bureaucratic efficiency and cost-cutting measures. Supporters argue that his tough stance will eliminate redundancy and improve government responsiveness, while critics claim it could create a climate of fear and undermine essential public services. The move has sparked intense debate over how productivity should be measured in the public sector. While critics claim it could create a climate of fear Hamas freed 6 hostages from Gaza, marking the final release of living Israeli captives under the initial phase of a fragile ceasefire agreement. In exchange, Israel released hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and detainees. The deal, brokered through international mediation, is seen as a crucial yet tentative step towards a de-escalation. While the exchange have been welcomed by families of those freed, concerns persist over the long-term stability of the ceasefire. Israeli officials remain cautious, emphasizing the need for further negotiations to secure the release of additional captives still held in Gaza. Meanwhile, Palestinian groups continue to push for broader prisoner releases, adding pressure to already delicate diplomatic efforts.
Tal Shoham and Avera Mengistu were released first in southern Gaza's Rafah, followed by Elia Cohen, Omer Shem Tov and Omer Venkert, all seized from the site of the Nova Music Festival in Hamas's October 7, 2023 attack on southern Israel. They were handed over to the Red Cross in Nusayrat to be transported to Israeli forces. Dozens of militants stood guard in a crowd that had gathered to watch the handover as armed and masked Hamas men stood either side of the three captives. Hamas later handed over a sixth hostage in Gaza City, Hisham al-Sayed, with no public ceremony. Al-Sayed and Mengistu have been held by Hamas since they entered Gaza of their own accord around a decade ago. Shoham was abducted from Kibbutz Be'eri along with his wife and two children, who were freed in a brief truce in November 2023. The six are the last living hostages from a group of 33 due to be freed in the first stage of the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas that took effect on January 19th. Hundreds of Israelis gathered in what has become known as Hostages Square in Tel Aviv. Some lit candles under photos of the Bibas family, whose bodies were returned this week. Directed hostage releases have included public ceremonies in which captives are taken on stage and some made to speak. They have faced criticism, with the United Nations denouncing what it calls the parading of hostages. Hamas rejected the criticism Saturday, describing the ceremonies as a solemn show of Palestinian unity. In return for the hostages, Israel is expected to release over 600 Palestinian prisoners and detainees held in its jails. They will include 445 Gazans rounded up by Israeli forces during the war, as well as dozens of convicts serving lengthy or life terms. Around 60 more Israeli captives, less than half of whom are believed to be alive, remain in Gaza. Tal Shoham and Avera Mengistu were released first in southern Gaza's Rafah, followed by Elia Cohen, Omer Shem Tov and Omer Venkert, all seized from the site of the Nova Music Festival in Hamas's October 7, 2023 attack on southern Israel. They were handed over to the Red Cross in Nusayrat to be transported to Israeli forces. Dozens of militants stood guard in a crowd that had gathered to watch the handover as armed and masked Hamas men stood either side of the three captives. Hamas later handed over a sixth hostage in Gaza City, Hisham al-Sayed, with no public ceremony. Al-Sayed and Mengistu have been held by Hamas since.
Thousands of mourners gathered in a massive stadium on the outskirts of Beirut to pay their respect at the funeral of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah and his heir apparent Hashem Safieddine. And Nasrallah was killed in an Israeli airstrike in September, and Safieddine, his successor, met the same fate in the subsequent strike just a week later. The somber event saw an outpouring of grief and support from Hezbollah members and their allies, marking a pivotal moment in the ongoing regional conflict. The stadium was filled with emotional tributes, and the loss of these key figures leaves a significant void in the organization's leadership. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin participated in the solemn ceremony as Russia commemorated Defender of the Fatherland Day, a significant national holiday honoring military service, and the ceremony comes on the eve of the third anniversary of Moscow's controversial offensive against Kyiv, which has marked a turning point in the ongoing conflict. Putin's involvement in the event highlights the country's focus on patriotism and military strength. Even as tensions with the Ukrainian remain high, the occasion serves as a reminder of the ongoing war and its enduring impacts on both Russia and Ukraine. The Friedrich Merz, the fortuner to become Germany's next chancellor and the leader of the conservative CDU party, cast his ballot in the highly anticipated German election. As the election draws closer, Merz has been vocal about his plans to cede the country further rightward, aiming to attract voters who have recently shifted towards the far-right anti-immigration party Alternative for Germany, and the AfD is currently aiming for a record result, which Merz hopes to reverse by addressing concerns about immigration and national security. Merz's stance marks a critical moment in the election as he seeks to reclaim conservative support while navigating the challenges of a deeply divided electorate. Chancellor Olaf Scholz participated in the voting process for Germany's snap election, marking a crucial moment in the country's political landscape. As Scholz from the Social Democratic Party cast his ballot and the conservative opposition remains the strong favourite to win. The election has become a heated contest with the far-right anti-immigration Alternative for Germany party gaining significant traction. The AfD is eyeing a record result and capitalizing on the rising concerns over the immigration and national security. Scholz SPD, however, faces an uphill battle to retain its standing as it competes against the conservative bloc and the growing influence of the AfD, which has become a powerful force in Germany politics. An autopsy on the remains of Israeli hostages Sri Bibas and her two young children who were recently handed over by Hamas militants has revealed no evidence of injuries caused by a bombing, according to a top forensic expert. In a video statement released by the government press office, the expert provided findings offering clarity on the circumstances surrounding their deaths. This development comes amid growing tensions and scrutiny of the hostage situation, with the discovery raising further questions about the treatment of hostages during their captivity. The results have been critical for the investigation into the tragic deaths of the family.
Over 500 days since the horrific October 7th terror attack, we have identified the remains of Shiri Bibas 2 days after identifying her children Ariel and Kfir. Our examination found no evidence of injuries caused by bombing. Over 500 days since the horrific October 7th after identifying her children Ariel and Kfir. Our examination found no evidence of injuries caused by bombing.
Well, those were the latest updates in World Bulletin. Keep watching CVR News English. This is Havila Kuttapalli. Have a good day.